Aviation's $20 billion funding risk urges business leaders to optimize airspace strategy and build infrastructure resilience. If you run a modern enterprise that heavily relies on fluid global supply chains, you absolutely cannot afford to ignore the staggering $20 billion funding risk currently threatening the structural optimization of our national airspace strategy. You might mistakenly assume that this massive $20 billion air traffic control modernization request is merely an isolated government transportation problem, but it actually represents a severe, cascading business continuity risk for your daily commercial operations. When you look closely at the underlying financial timeline, you will realize this emergency request arrives immediately after Congress already handed over an earlier $12.5 billion allocation to patch up the nation's crumbling infrastructure. If you add these two astronomical figures together, you will see that total public modernization commitments are rapidly ballooning past $32.5 billion before the overall program even approaches a verifiable, nationwide finish line. You should note that L-Impact Solutions explicitly warns that the current conversation focuses far too heavily on simply securing this new $20 billion, rather than demanding disciplined execution quality and strict governance. The undeniable truth is that commercial aviation injects hundreds of billions of dollars into the domestic economy every single year, meaning that structural infrastructure bottlenecks directly degrade your corporate bottom line. If you evaluate the wider macroeconomic picture, you will find this crumbling network supports millions of jobs and keeps your critical manufacturing, pharmaceutical, defense logistics, and high-value export supply chains moving forward. When flight operations become structurally unreliable, your business suffers immense, hidden productivity losses that stretch far beyond airport terminals and ripple destructively into almost every single commercial sector of the economy. You can easily see the alarming structural cracks yourself in a recent government assessment, which shockingly revealed that 51 of the FAA's 138 critical telecommunications systems are deemed completely unsustainable. Think about that devastating fraction for a brief second. Nearly 37% of the very systems keeping commercial aircraft safely separated in the crowded skies are currently running on borrowed time. Your operations are at risk because technicians can no longer source replacement parts for many of these legacy platforms, simply because the original equipment manufacturers completely stopped producing the necessary components decades ago. If you want a painful, real-world example of this operational chaos, just recall the recent communication outages at Newark that abruptly left thousands of passengers stranded and delayed hundreds of flights. These systemic technology failures do not just disrupt family vacations. They force sudden air traffic restrictions, scramble complex airline scheduling, and drastically drive up overhead costs for your primary carriers and express cargo operators. According to L-Impact Solutions, investing capital at a historic scale exceeding $32.5 billion means you must demand rigorous governance standards comparable to national defense projects rather than traditional, inefficient public procurement processes. You are looking at a massive, complex engineering roadmap aimed at 2028, by which time the FAA aggressively intends to deploy approximately 5,000 high-speed network connections across the entire country. The Aviation Agency also plans to install 27,000 new digital radios alongside 612 modern radar systems that must operate seamlessly across integrated fiber, satellite, and wireless communication bands. You should know that field technicians have already successfully replaced nearly 50% of the archaic, decaying legacy copper wiring that has been actively slowing down critical data transfer speeds for generations. As you read this summary, the FAA has already modernized 270 remote radio sites and pushed out crucial new surface awareness technology to 54 major airports nationwide to mitigate ground collisions. If you track infrastructure progress with a metric-driven eye, you will be glad to know that 17 major control towers have finally transitioned completely away from paper logs to modern electronic flight strips. Every single hour of unnecessary flight delay your team endures aggressively reduces commercial aircraft utilization, spikes expensive fuel consumption, and heavily elevates contract crew operating costs across your travel budget. When commercial airlines operate right at the absolute edge of their capacity during peak periods, these persistent infrastructure bottlenecks act as an inflationary force that continuously raises your business expenses. You are currently forcing an outdated system built for a previous generation to handle an entirely new era of complex traffic, including surging cargo volumes and the rapid integration of unmanned aircraft systems. If you allow short-sighted policymakers to delay this sweeping modernization any further, you are going to face exponentially higher long-term replacement costs and catastrophic operational gridlock across the country. L-Impact Solutions points out that the true strategic weakness here is immense governance complexity. Given that successful modernization requires flawlessly juggling the Department of Transportation, the FAA, and more than 300 operational facilities. You also have to carefully factor in the highly conflicting interests of commercial airlines, regional airports, aircraft manufacturers, powerful labor unions, technology vendors, and specialized cybersecurity contractors. If you closely analyze the human capital side of the equation, the FAA's latest comprehensive workforce strategy targets a baseline of approximately 12,563 fully certified professional controllers to run the network safely. The harsh reality you are dealing with right now is that the FAA only deploys roughly 11,000 certified controllers, leaving a dangerous, chronically strained operational deficit throughout our nation's busiest towers. You should realize that while there are roughly 4,000 eager personnel currently sitting in the training pipeline, achieving full operational certification can easily require more than 2 intensive years of localized training. To aggressively combat this talent deficit, the FAA is currently planning a massive hiring spree of 2,200 controllers in FY 2026, 2,300 in FY 2027, and another 2,400 controllers in FY 2028. However, you cannot realistically expect technology alone to save the day when severe controller training bottlenecks, mandatory overtime, and chronic workplace fatigue remain major structural constraints on the system. As your sensitive flight data continuously migrates toward cloud-enabled, IP-based digital infrastructure, you are being exposed to a dramatically expanding, highly sophisticated cybersecurity threat landscape every single day. The upcoming network expansion will link an unprecedented 5,170 high-speed network connections, 27,625 digital radios, and 462 digital voice switches directly into the same operational environment. When you hook up all those vulnerable digital assets alongside 612 next-generation radar systems, you radically widen the technical cyber attack surface that foreign adversaries and hostile hackers can actively target. L-Impact Solutions strongly argues that modernization success should never be measured by the total billions appropriated by Congress, but rather by holding critical communication systems to a strict availability standard above 99.99%. You need to forcefully demand that Congress shifts away from budget-driven funding toward performance-driven modernization that ties every single dollar to measurable milestone reductions in average flight delay minutes. The FAA's massive technology transformation relies heavily on deploying 200 surface awareness initiative systems to ensure that aircraft can be tracked with pinpoint accuracy while moving on the ground. Your commercial pilots and controllers will also eventually rely on 435 advanced enterprise information display systems and 113 specialized tower simulation systems to streamline high-stress terminal operations. You must firmly insist that these newly acquired technology assets operate through strictly segregated, geographically redundant architectures, so a localized system failure never triggers another sweeping national travel meltdown. If you truly want to eliminate training bottlenecks, you must advocate for advanced simulation tools, AI-supported instructional training, and competency-based assessments to rapidly graduate the 12,500 targeted controllers. Imagine how much smoother and more predictable your corporate logistics would be if predictive artificial intelligence tools optimized traffic sequencing and accurately forecasted severe weather disruptions 4 full hours in advance. You can aggressively protect taxpayer dollars by forcing all major technology contracts to adopt proven commercial best practices, including mandatory independent engineering audits and aggressive supplier diversification strategies. You deserve absolute operational transparency from public servants, which is why the federal government should publish mandatory monthly national dashboards tracking radar uptime, controller certification rates, and real-time expenditures. To successfully prevent nearly 37% of critical systems from rotting into unsustainability ever again, You must advocate for predefined asset lifecycle replacement cycles backed by continuous digital monitoring. You should strongly urge Congress to establish a permanent, multi-year aviation modernization fund to completely eliminate the chaotic, unpredictable reliance on periodic emergency infrastructure appropriations. Every single connected platform in the future airspace architecture must comply with strict zero-trust principles, continuous software vulnerability assessments, and routine, unannounced penetration testing protocols before deployment. You need to push the broader aviation ecosystem to mandate rigorous, scenario-based resilience testing to regularly simulate active cyber attacks, total radar blackouts, and peak seasonal holiday demand surges. By completely ditching sluggish, decade-long procurement cycles in favor of modular, cloud-native technology architectures, you ensure that the national airspace can upgrade fluidly as modern software capabilities rapidly evolve. L-Impact Solutions emphasizes that this proposed $20 billion capital investment should be viewed as a profound strategic opportunity to secure long-term national economic resilience rather than simple discretionary spending. If your business actively depends on complex semiconductor supply chains, advanced manufacturing, express overnight cargo, or international trade, you must monitor this modernization progress as a leading indicator of global competitiveness. Ultimately, you will find that national infrastructure only creates a sustainable competitive advantage when capital investment, strict governance, advanced technology, and human workforce capabilities advance hand in hand toward a unified goal. Can your business survive aging airspace failures? Comment below. For more strategic analyses, visit our business consultancy website, link in the description below. Thank you.